Good morning. Bright and early here. I'm going to be pulling the suspension off of my race bike for annual service. So I just want to walk you through that process of what it looks like on my bike, and hopefully you'll feel a little more empowered to do so on your own motorcycle. Okay, so starting out, I want to go over some terminology and some things you're going to need to make this job a little bit easier on yourself. So first off, we have our shock. That connects to the swing arm, the frame, and really functions as the rear wheel suspension. And then on the front, we have our forks. Now my forks are the stock tubes, but I have Olin's internals in them. So this little gas chamber here is actually closed off with the cartridge kit that I have for the bike. They are still a gas charged fork, but they are not using the external reservoir. Tools. Your life is going to be a lot easier if you have a head lift stand. So this is a front stand that hooks under the nose of the bike and picks the whole bike up so that I can pull the forks off. Next up, so my bikes both have solid foot pegs. So these are aftermarket rear sets, and these foot pegs are solid, which means lifting up the back end of the bike is a lot simpler. In my case, I have these peg stands. These ones are homemade. Woodcraft makes some, and those will hook onto the pegs as I get the back end of the bike up. Sorry, my exhaust is off because I'm also dealing with that right now, while the suspension is away and getting serviced. And last but not least is the rear stand. First step is going to be getting the tank off the bike. Unfortunately, there is a bolt underneath here for the rear shock that I have to get to, so we're going to start there. Oh, and let's not forget about tools. So you're going to need a set of Allen wrenches to get started, any specialty size sockets that you would need for your axles on your bike. Depending on the bike, you may also need a axle socket. One of these guys attaches to a 3/8 drive ratchet. I also like to wear some gloves. These are the ones that have like the grippy on them. They're a little heavier duty. They don't tear as easy. All right, let's get started. It's been my tank has this connector which goes to the fuel pump. So I'm disconnecting that right now before I'm trying to lift the tank. There's also an under the tank hose that I need to pop off as well. So I'm going to get a screwdriver out for that, so I'm ready to go. Turns out I did have coffee. I did not forget that. But I'd set it down on my rolling stand. Right, that little guy. And of course, my puppy, being the bull in a china shop that he is, spilled it everywhere. No project can be simple. There was the tank cover, which had this bike. It's not bolted on stock. It should be bolted on. Yeah, take those bolts out. There's either bolts here on a stock setup or zip ties on the race bike here because, yeah, race bike. Moving the seat on the stock bike is somewhat similar process. I don't even have the stock seat on the bike anymore. So. And then there's these tank bolts on each side that come off. The worst part about taking off the suspension is getting ready to take it off. Right, there's a drain hose, or vent hose, I should say, here. There would sometimes be another one there, overflow. And then we gotta pop off the gas line, which is still an OEM on my bike. Generally, I like to have a rag handy for this because there's always a little fuel that comes popping out. Not like it's much, but something like it. Since I already undid the fuel pump, tank is free. I'm gonna go set that on a tub or container or something soft on my bike. That fuel pump and comes out and sticks lower than the tank, so you can't really just set it on the ground or you risk damaging that. So I don't like to do that. If I'm in it, ready to collect and peel it in. That has now given me access to the top end of the shop. All right, next up, I'm going to go ahead and get both wheels off the bike, get it on the front stand. All right, now we'll get this rear wheel off. So this bike, I have what we call a captive brake caliper. So it's actually attached to my over suspension here. Makes it a lot easier to get things on and off. The brake caliper doesn't fall out, which this bike model is really horrible about. Since I don't have to, I'm not changing the wheel or anything, I'm just going to go ahead and leave the bracket carrier and stuff on the bike. So next up, we're going to get this front wheel off. So the bolts I have on my calipers are a drilled 12 hex head, so using a socket. Stock was an Allen head bolt. So the other thing I'm going to go grab quick is a bungee. So my brake calipers are hanging on the brake lines the entire time my suspension is gone. This thing. I do need to take this front fender off as well. And the last thing on my forks I have to get off are the wires for the wheel speed sensor and the sensor itself. Those are also attached to the forks. So the forks are now free, but we're actually going to finish up the shock here first. There's one bolt right here that we need to undo. We gotta get this bolt out. This can stay on, and then there's we need to take the shock off right here as well. Now on here I have spacers, and that's for a geometry setup, and then this bolt can also stay on for these purposes as long as I can get at this one. So something I had done, technically I don't need to remove my tank to get this off. I need to do winter maintenance anyways, and if your bike is stock, you're gonna have to take the tank off. But I had this nut welded onto this mount, so I can come in with an extension through this little hole here that they have in the frame and get to this bolt and get it out. So if I'm at a race weekend or something and I need to get my shock off for some reason in a hurry, I can do that. So next we're going to get that out of there. Because I have clip-ons, so aftermarket handlebars and stuff on the bike, what I need to do is loosen these bolts that clamp the clip-on onto the fork, and then we will loosen those till the handlebars are loose, and then there's one bolt, and hard to see up here at the front right there, one with a little green mark. That bolt is what's part of our upper triple, holds the top of the fork. And then down here, the camera will focus, right there, we have two bolts on each side on the lower triple. Once we undo those three bolts and these clip-ons, these forks will drop right out and we'll get them off. Final bolts, just so that you don't just go dropping it straight to the ground. All right, fork off. Transponder holder being on here. We'll hold this fork up for a second. So, maybe that will just slide off. It's on my front fork for my transponder for racing. Yeah, there's that one. Ready to go. This is clamped and safety wired. I've generally set my suspension off this way. So that's really it. I'm gonna clean this up now, and then I'm gonna show you my packing. I have a large 2-rifle gun case with pick foam that I invested in several years ago. So you pick out the foam in the shape of your suspension, put it in there, much safer way to transport it. I generally let things get too dirty to begin with, so this isn't too big of a deal. But if you don't thoroughly clean your bike semi-regularly, you might be in for a bit of a mess when you start. And I like to inspect my own stuff. You know, I want to know what's normal for my bike, what's not, where things are, where they're located. It may sound silly, but cleaning your bike is actually a really good way to get to know your bike. Sit out there and spend some time with it. Get to know your bike, what it has and has going on, what it doesn't. Be shocked at the number of like loose bolts and stuff I've found. Just cleaning, just doing a nice thorough detailing. And yeah, sure, you can get somebody else to do it for you, but when you're stranded on the side of the road, it sure is helpful to know your own motorcycle and know what you're looking at. So this is my pick case. Now, I've had this for a number of years, so my pick foam was starting to, you know, fall apart or come out where I didn't want it to come out, so hence the janky duct tape, but it's effective and working and has extended the life of my case by a fair bit. So yeah, 2 forks, shock. I can ship it this way, I can transport it this way. Works great. So that's pretty much the removal of the suspension on the 2017 ZX10R. Hopefully you found this a little bit helpful. If so, be sure to hit that subscribe button and like, and follow us for more.